Spiritual awakening is often portrayed as the summit of a long journey, the moment when all the questions stop and the truth finally settles in. For many, it feels like arrival, like you've discovered what you were always searching for. But the truth is, awakening is not the end. It's the beginning of something quieter, deeper, and often misunderstood. When your spirit reaches a new level of consciousness, the next phase doesn't look like what came before. The vivid signs, the constant synchronicities, the emotional highs, they start to fade. In their place, a strange silence arrives. It's not emptiness, but stillness. Not a void, but a threshold. And this stillness can feel confusing at first. You wonder if you've lost something, or if something's gone wrong. But what you're really feeling is transformation. This quiet isn't a step backward. It's not a spiritual dry spell. It's the signal that you've crossed into a new layer of inner evolution. One that doesn't shout or sparkle, but whispers and deepens. You're no longer being pulled to seek answers. Now you're being asked to live as the answer, to embody what you've learned, to root it in your daily presence. The world around you may still look the same, but something inside you has shifted. The way you perceive reality begins to change. You stop reaching for meaning in the sky and start grounding it in the soil of your everyday life. You begin to realize that enlightenment isn't about what you experience, it's about how you exist. And yet, this is where the paradox begins. The further you travel into awakening, the simpler everything seems. And yet, within that simplicity lies a profound complexity, one that few people understand and even fewer talk about. Because once the fireworks of awakening subside, what remains is a kind of spiritual integration that happens in silence, far from the spotlight. Today, we're going to explore the strange changes that happen when the spiritual awakening ends, or rather, when it transitions. We'll look at the unexpected shifts that occur when the noise fades and you find yourself in a space where calm replaces the chaos of spiritual breakthrough. My hope is that this knowledge will offer clarity and peace, because the end of awakening isn't a loss, it's a deepening. It's where real transformation begins, not with signs and wonders, but with stillness, with presence, with truth that no longer needs to be found, because it's already within you. Seeking has always been at the heart of the spiritual path. It is the momentum that carries us through books, rituals, teachings, and revelations. It fuels our hunger to understand the unseen, to grasp our place in the vastness of the cosmos. For much of the journey, it feels like a sacred pursuit. We chase signs, decode synchronicities, follow nudges from the universe, believing that if we look deeply enough, the answers will eventually appear. And then, one day, the seeking stops. Suddenly, the signs fade. The synchronicities that once seemed to shout from every corner grow quiet. The emotional highs of spiritual breakthrough begin to level out, and in their place is something many don't expect: stillness. This stillness can feel disorienting. It's not the dramatic climax we imagined. It's not fireworks or revelation. Instead, it's as if the universe has stepped back and left us in a kind of spiritual silence. And if we're not prepared for it, we might mistake it for abandonment, or worse, spiritual regression. But this stillness is not the absence of connection. It's the arrival of integration. What was once external guidance now becomes internal knowing. You don't need 1,000 signs to confirm your direction, because your life has become the sign. You no longer chase meaning in every event or symbol. Instead, meaning radiates from who you are becoming. This phase isn't marked by grand revelations or cosmic downloads. It's marked by subtle shifts, by your willingness to live without constant reassurance, by your ability to trust the silence, and by your readiness to walk without applause. It may feel like something is missing, but that emptiness is not a void. It is space, a sacred clearing, not a loss of purpose, but the beginning of a deeper form of presence, where once you related to life through questions, you now relate through experience, through presence, through acceptance. The challenge, of course, is that we're conditioned to equate intensity with progress. We crave the highs, the breakthroughs, the emotional waves that let us feel like we're growing. So when peace arrives, it can feel foreign, uneasy, even wrong. But the truth is, this peace is not the end of growth, it's the maturing of it. It's what happens when transformation no longer needs to shout to be real. You may feel restless. You may wonder if something's wrong. But that discomfort is not a signal of failure. It's the tension of your spirit adjusting to a quieter, more grounded rhythm. This is where you stop seeking to become and start allowing yourself to be. It's not about losing the fire of awakening. It's about learning to carry it in silence. The journey is no longer about chasing the divine. It's about recognizing that the divine has already taken up residence within you, that you are no longer a seeker, you are a sanctuary. And now, your work is not to search for truth, but to live it, to walk through life with steady presence, rooted awareness, and a heart open enough to receive without grasping. This is the quiet revolution of spiritual awakening. Not louder, not brighter, just deeper. After a spiritual awakening, a new reality begins to unfold, not only in the mind or the soul, but deep within the body. But unlike the soul, the body moves slower. It doesn't awaken in a flash of insight or an emotional breakthrough. It shifts in its own time. And this delay, this gap between spiritual elevation and physical integration, is one of the most overlooked yet essential parts of true transformation. Your body, after awakening, becomes a mirror for the soul. The inner changes you've experienced begin to surface in subtle and sometimes startling ways. You might notice shifts in your eating habits, your sleep patterns, your energy levels, or even your physical appearance. Foods you once craved now feel heavy. You may find yourself drawn to silence more than stimulation. You may want to sleep more, or far less. You might even feel as though your body no longer fits the person you're becoming. These are not coincidences. They are the body's response to the frequency shift happening within you. And yet, this process can be confusing. Just when you expect to feel lighter, more evolved, you may instead feel exhausted, like your body is dragging behind while your spirit is racing ahead. Old aches may return. Chronic fatigue may settle in. You may question if you're doing something wrong, but this isn't regression, it's realignment. Your body is catching up to the consciousness your spirit has already embraced. And realignment takes energy. It takes time. This transition often involves the release of dense stored energy that's been lodged in the body for years, sometimes decades. We tend to believe that when we've healed something emotionally or spiritually, it's finished. But the body remembers. It stores unresolved emotions, suppressed memories, and past stress in tissues, in muscles, in the nervous system. When you awaken spiritually, that old energy doesn't disappear. It rises to the surface, not to punish you, but to be seen, to be felt, to be finally released. You may find yourself crying for no reason, feeling waves of sadness or anxiety with no clear trigger. You may revisit old traumas, not in your mind, but in your body. A tight chest, a sore back, a sudden wave of tension. All of it is part of the detox, the purification, the shedding of what no longer belongs in the version of you that's emerging. This is not regression, it's resurrection. Your body is preparing to house the energy of who you've become. It is learning how to hold your light, how to sustain your soul's new rhythm without collapsing under the weight of unprocessed pain. And this too is sacred, because you are not just becoming spiritually awake, you are becoming physically aligned. It may be uncomfortable, it may feel uncertain, but every ache, every shift, every unexpected fatigue is evidence that the transformation is happening on a cellular level. You are not breaking down, you are being rebuilt. This is the deeper work of awakening. Not just to know truth, but to embody it. To live in a body that no longer echoes your old stories, but supports your new state of being. A body that doesn't just carry you, but reflects you. The real you, the aligned you, the whole you. And that is the kind of transformation that doesn't just change how you see the world, it changes how you move through it. One of the most unexpected and challenging shifts that often follows deep inner transformation is a sense of loneliness and disconnection. You may begin to notice that relationships that once felt rich and intimate now seem distant, even unrecognizable. This is the paradox of post-awakening loneliness. The more awake you become, the more isolated you may feel, especially from the people with whom you once shared your most meaningful connections. This sense of separation can feel disorienting, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically. As your frequency shifts, it becomes harder to resonate with the same people, conversations, or environments that once felt like home. Familiar rhythms suddenly feel out of sync. Interactions that once came easily now feel hollow or strained. You may catch yourself wondering if you've done something wrong, if you're unintentionally pushing people away. But in truth, this is not a breakdown, it's a natural byproduct of growth. Separation is not punishment, it's realignment. As your energy shifts, your relationships must recalibrate. Some connections will fade, not because of conflict, but because they no longer vibrate at the same frequency. It's not rejection, it's resonance. Your soul is now attuning itself to something truer. And while this may feel like loss, it's actually making space for a deeper kind of connection, one that doesn't require constant explanation, but instead rests in quiet understanding. New relationships will begin to emerge, people who meet you in the silence, who don't ask you to explain who you've become, because they feel it. These bonds don't rush to define or validate. They hold space. They reflect. They simply understand. And that kind of understanding fills a space that once felt hollow. What once felt like aching loneliness begins to transform into sacred solitude. And in that solitude, something powerful unfolds. You begin to meet yourself in ways you never could while surrounded by noise. Without the distraction of constant connection or external affirmation, you start uncovering deeper layers of your own being. You begin to hear the quiet voice within, the voice that was always speaking, but often drowned out by the need to belong. This period of separation creates fertile ground for clarity. You start to discern what was real connection and what was just shared comfort. You learn the difference between being seen and being understood, and in doing so, you prepare yourself, not just to be around people again, but to be in relationships that are rooted in truth, not in familiarity. Eventually, you begin to cherish the connections that do appear, those rare souls who understand the terrain you've traveled without you needing to draw a map. These people don't compete or compare. They don't rush you to be who you were. They simply walk beside you. And their presence affirms something that no external validation ever could. You are not alone. You are just becoming more aligned. And alignment always narrows before it expands. So when old relationships fall away, understand this. It's not a fall. It's a transition. A movement toward deeper union with your true self. A repositioning that makes room for a new network of souls who walk with the same reverence, the same awareness, the same depth. Loneliness then becomes less of a void and more of a doorway. A sacred pause before real communion. A silence before the song begins again. This time in harmony. There comes a point on the spiritual path where the once vivid rhythm of repeating numbers, uncanny coincidences, and moments of obvious divine orchestration begins to fade. The signs slow down, the synchronicities grow quieter, and what once felt like a constant stream of guidance suddenly slips into silence. For many, this shift is deeply unsettling. You may begin to question whether you've fallen out of alignment, lost your connection to the universe, or somehow slipped backward in your journey. But the absence of signs is not a sign of absence. It is confirmation of embodiment. The wisdom you once looked for outside yourself has now taken root within. You no longer need repeated numbers to confirm your intuition. You no longer rely on external messages to know you're on the right path. You've become the message. You've internalized the frequency of guidance so completely that it no longer needs to knock loudly on your door. This silence isn't disconnection, it's maturation. In the earlier stages of awakening, signs serve a purpose. They awaken us to the existence of divine order, to the idea that there is more happening than meets the eye. They comfort us, inspire us, and remind us that we are seen. But over time, like training wheels on a bike, they are no longer needed in the same way. Their silence doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're now trusted to navigate from within. You have become attuned to a deeper kind of compass, the one that doesn't flash across clocks or license plates, but whispers in your chest. A quiet knowing, a grounded clarity, a subtle sense of alignment that doesn't require proof because it simply is. Ironically, one of the clearest signs that you're aligned is that you stop needing signs. The shift from depending on synchronicities to trusting your own discernment is one of the most powerful thresholds in spiritual growth. It is no longer about decoding external messages. It's about resting in internal truth, listening not for confirmation, but for resonance, moving not because you saw a sign, but because you know it's time. This is what it means to walk with wisdom, to live with embodied intuition. There will still be signs, of course. The universe never stops speaking, but the volume changes, the language evolves. You no longer demand evidence, you trust essence. You walk by faith, not fireworks, and in that quiet, something remarkable happens. You begin to realize that the most divine guidance is not what appears in the world, but what emerges from your soul. No numbers, no symbols. Just a deep, steady sense that you are exactly where you need to be, and that is the loudest message of all. As we've explored, the end of a spiritual awakening is not the conclusion of the path. It's the quiet beginning of a deeper chapter, one that no longer thrives on seeking, but on being. This stage is not about reaching for more. It's about anchoring into what has already awakened within you. And from that anchoring, the new mission arises, not to chase light, but to become it in motion. The endless search for answers begins to give way to something more grounded, the desire to live the truth you've come to know, to embody it, to serve through it. What once existed as insight now calls to become action. What once felt like revelation now asks to be rooted in the way you move through the world. This new phase is not about gaining knowledge. It's about applying wisdom. It's no longer about understanding higher truths. It's about becoming a vessel through which those truths can serve others. For many, this transition is marked by a quiet but undeniable pull, a desire to help, to teach, to build, to create. Not out of obligation or ego, but out of alignment. There is a natural shift from absorption to expression, from reflection to embodiment. You no longer feel the need to prove your transformation. You simply live it. You stop asking, "What else do I need to learn?" and begin asking, "How can I use what I now carry?" You begin to notice that your words have weight. Your presence shifts rooms. Your choices echo further than they once did. This is not by accident. It's what happens when inner alignment begins to spill into outer reality, when healing turns to influence, when clarity becomes contribution. And yet, there is no pressure here. This isn't a call to hustle or to strive. It's an invitation to integrity, to let your actions mirror your essence, to let the life you build reflect the truths that have been built within you. It's about becoming a living transmission of your awakening, not by preaching, but by practicing, not by trying harder, but by living truer. You might feel compelled to create art that speaks from your soul, or start conversations that matter, or simply show up with kindness in spaces that have long felt cold. Whatever form it takes, it will feel natural. It won't demand performance. It will feel like breathing. This is the final paradox. After so much seeking, you come to realize you are no longer here to find your purpose. You're here to live it, quietly, clearly, consistently. You no longer look outward for the next step. You take it. You no longer ask who you are. You demonstrate it. And in that living, you discover that your mission was never something to achieve. It was always something to embody. Once you've begun to integrate the wisdom you've received and step into a life of embodied purpose, another layer of transformation quietly unfolds. It reveals itself not through insight or action, but through perception. Your awareness begins to stretch, and with it, your sensitivity deepens, not just emotionally or mentally, but energetically. You start to notice what others miss. You begin to feel the invisible. Things that once seemed intangible suddenly come into focus. It's as if a veil has lifted, exposing an unseen dimension that's been present all along. You become attuned to energy flows between yourself and the world, between people, places, even objects. Your consciousness sharpens, not through thinking, but through subtle sensing. You can walk into a room and feel the weight of a conversation that happened hours before. You sense unspoken emotions. You recognize truth beneath words. You pick up frequencies that once passed unnoticed. This heightened sensitivity is a gift, but it can also be overwhelming. Where once you could move through the world somewhat shielded, now everything feels more open, more raw. The emotional charge of others, the energy of spaces, the heaviness of collective tension, it all lands differently now. And if you're not prepared, it can feel like too much, like you're walking around with no skin. But this is not a flaw, it's an invitation to refinement. Your empathy, once intuitive and gentle, becomes magnified. You don't just recognize pain in others, you feel it. You don't just understand someone's joy, you vibrate with it. But this depth of connection demands responsibility, because if you don't know how to filter what you absorb, you'll carry what was never yours to hold. That's where energetic boundaries become essential, not as walls, but as filters. Learning to distinguish what belongs to you and what doesn't is not selfish, it's spiritual hygiene. Without it, your emotional bandwidth becomes overloaded. Your nervous system becomes tired. Your light dims under the weight of everything it has unintentionally collected. Managing this new sensitivity is not about shutting down, it's about becoming skillful. Grounding practices like meditation, solitude, and conscious breath become sacred tools. Creating space between your energy and the world's expectations becomes a form of self-love. Learning to say no when necessary isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. You begin to honor your own rhythm as much as you honor your service to others. Sensitivity, when embraced without skill, can lead to burnout. But when refined, it becomes your superpower. This kind of awareness is not just perception, it's presence. It's the ability to walk into a room and not be overwhelmed, but discerning. To sense what's needed without becoming consumed by it. To feel deeply without losing yourself in someone else's pain. This expanded awareness isn't just something you possess, it's something you practice. And the more you respect its power, the more clarity, compassion, and alignment you gain. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop absorbing noise. You begin transmitting peace. What once felt like a burden becomes a blessing, not just for you, but for everyone you touch. One of the strangest experiences after spiritual awakening is this. The world around you appears exactly the same, yet nothing feels the same. Life continues. People maintain their routines. The news still runs, the streets are still busy, but inside, you know, something fundamental has changed. The things that used to hold weight, now feel hollow. The dramas that once stirred emotion now pass by like wind. The roles you once played so effortlessly feel foreign, and the expectations of others begin to echo rather than resonate. The world is still spinning, but you are no longer caught in its gravity. This shift doesn't happen with fireworks. It happens quietly, silently. It's not that you've become detached, it's that you've become anchored elsewhere. You begin to move from a different center. You listen differently. You speak differently. You no longer react out of habit. You respond from stillness, and that stillness changes everything. What once demanded urgency now meets presence. What once provoked fear now invites compassion. What once felt personal now feels neutral. You're still here, in the same space, but you're living in a different dimension of awareness. One where external chaos no longer dictates your inner climate. And yet, this transformation can be subtle. The people around you may not notice. They may continue treating you as if nothing has changed. But you'll know, because the way you meet the moment has changed. The way you relate to conflict, to joy, to the unknown. It all feels softer, deeper, less reactive. The outer world hasn't shifted. You have. You begin to see that awakening wasn't about escaping this world. It was about seeing it differently, engaging with it differently, loving it more deeply, but needing less from it. You don't need the world to change in order for you to feel peace. You found that peace within, and from that space, you begin to reinterpret everything around you. So while the outside may still look ordinary, your experience of it is now extraordinary. You no longer crave distraction because you're no longer running. You don't chase meaning, you carry it. Every moment becomes an opportunity to live in alignment, even in the mundane, even in traffic, even in silence, even in the mess. The real shift wasn't in what happened to you. It was in how you learned to show up for it, fully, present, whole. And so in this ongoing journey, remember this. Transformation does not require the world to change. It only asks that you meet it with a new presence. The shift is not about fixing the external. It's about living from your new center. A center rooted in clarity, stillness, and truth. And from that center, life begins to rearrange, not because you forced it to, but because who you are now invites a different response from the world you once knew. Thank you for walking this path with me. If what you've heard today resonates with something inside you, if it stirred something quiet but unmistakable, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Not just to support the content, but to stay connected to a community that values presence, purpose, and inner truth. And if you feel this message might speak to someone else's journey, don't hesitate to share it. Sometimes, the right words at the right moment can open a door we didn't even know was closed. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know how this message landed for you. What part of the journey are you on? What truths are you beginning to live? Your voice matters, and your presence here is part of the collective shift. Once again, thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to go inward. Take care of yourself, honor your energy, and continue walking in alignment with who you truly are. I'll see you in the next video.